Stop scrolling. You need to know the forgotten history of menstruation, because it's wild. This isn't just some gross or weird story. It's actually human history. It's a rabbit hole that spans thousands of years, and nobody talks about it. Half the population has dealt with this since the dawn of time, so why the silence? For hundreds of thousands of years, humans have lived with cycles, yet history books ignore it.
Historians would rather write 40 pages on Roman roads than one sentence on women's lives.
That's a massive problem, and today, we're finally going to start fixing the record.
We're traveling across the globe to see how ancient cultures actually managed their monthly cycles. It wasn't just about hygiene, it was about survival, culture, and sometimes absolute nonsense.
There's so much to unpack, from sacred rituals to the weirdest things men once believed.
For hundreds of thousands of years, humans have lived with cycles, yet history books ignore it. This is the video nobody made, but it's time we hit play! Let's go! First, let's clear the air. Menstruation isn't a modern discovery. It's ancient biology. People in the past weren't oblivious. They were just dealing with it differently. Many cultures saw it as a supernatural event, rather than just basic anatomy. That mixture of fear and reverence shaped how women were treated for centuries.
Before we dive into the pads and herbs, we have to understand the cultural backdrop.
Let's start in ancient Egypt, where things were surprisingly progressive. They actually documented medical conditions on papyrus, including menstruation. The Ebers Papyrus, dating back to 1550 BCE, is one of the oldest medical texts. They weren't ignoring it, they were studying it. So, what did they use?
Historians think they used softened papyrus as a primitive pad. It makes sense.
Papyrus was everywhere, cheap and soft. It was the ancient world's kitchen pantry solution. They also likely used linen, which was absorbent, washable, and reusable. That's incredibly efficient. It's a very practical, on-brand solution for such an advanced civilization. They were busy inventing calendars and dentistry, so they clearly valued practicality. In Egypt, it wasn't shameful. It was connected to fertility and the life-giving cycles of the Nile. They didn't lock women away. They allowed them to live their lives with minimal disruption.
Compare that to what comes next. Ancient Greece, the birthplace of philosophy and weird ideas. But look at this scroll. It proves the world is spherical. Poppycock! It is clearly supported by a giant turtle.
He believed menstrual blood was essentially failed semen. Yes, really.
People actually believed this for centuries. It was the mainstream scientific consensus. They thought women were just colder, weaker men, which made the process fail.
Then there's Pliny the Elder, who wrote a 37-volume encyclopedia and got most of it wrong. He claimed menstrual blood could kill crops, rust iron, and turn wine to vinegar. In Rome, menstruating women were treated like walking environmental hazards, not a fun garden party. Despite the stigma, they used practical tools like sea sponges, which were abundant.
There's a famous passage by the poet Ausonius that hints at this, and historians still debate it.
Class mattered. Wealthy women had access to fine linen and slaves to handle the cleaning.
For the poor, it was rough cloth and rags. The disparity was consistent across history. But the biggest obstacle wasn't the materials. It was the taboo that restricted women's lives.
In ancient Jewish law, specifically Leviticus, a menstruating woman was considered ritually unclean.
She couldn't be touched, couldn't touch certain objects, and had to undergo purification. This was about ritual purity, not hygiene in the modern sense. It's a different category. Similar restrictions appeared in Hindu and Zoroastrian texts, often with severe consequences. They were often isolated, denied contact with fire, water, or the earth itself. But in many indigenous cultures, it was a time for retreat and spiritual connection.
The Moon Lodge wasn't a punishment. It was a monthly retreat for women.
Let's jump to medieval Europe, which has a bad reputation for hygiene, and for good reason.
For most peasants, free bleeding was the reality. They worked hard and kept moving.
Thick wool skirts and layered undergarments were the only way to manage it.
Medieval doctors were obsessed with balancing the body, so they actually encouraged menstruation.
They had an entire category of herbal medicine called emmenagogues to stimulate flow.
Did they work? Some did. They knew their stuff, even if the theory was wild. Traditional Chinese medicine had an extraordinary relationship with the female body.
They treated it as a complete system, not a lesser one. It was all about balance. The modern disposable pad wasn't invented until the late 19th century. It's a blip in history.
The first ones, Lister's towels, were a total failure. Victorian women were too embarrassed to buy them.
It wasn't until 1921 that Kotex successfully marketed them as a hygiene necessity.
We have to remember that women have been managing this for millennia without the modern luxuries. They found solutions, they passed down knowledge, and they lived. That's the real history. Have you ever wondered about the great mysteries of history? From ancient Egypt to medieval castles, let's explore how they shaped the world.